Hello, everyone. I'm Doug Mooney, and I normally talk about butterflies. This is the first monarch I raised from an egg, and that's her first flower. That's milkweed. That's what they like. And so I took a good picture of her. They're nice and beautiful when they first hatch. These butterflies are King Kamehameha butterflies. They're one of the native species to Hawaii. And what I wanted to talk about is making your dragon fly. There's a project where we make paper dragons at elementary schools through Create Art with Erica Young. And let me turn off my virtual background so you can see. Scooting up here, and there's the background is off. So we made these paper dragons. And to make them fly, there's a couple of things that are wrong. So I glued my head on here, but you could staple it on. I stapled this one on also. When they balance too far back. It's balancing about halfway back, which is called half chord. Chord is the distance across the wing. They should balance at a quarter chord, which is about a quarter of the way on the wing, probably about in here, right behind this toothpick. The other problem is the wings were too floppy and they just flap up and it wouldn't fly. So I taped a toothpick here. Now you could use some more interesting tape. You could cut it to look like claws or whatever and put it there. And I didn't decorate this one. The head's a little floppy and the body's a little floppy, which gave me some problems later because if it flops to the side, this head acts like a big rudder that makes it turn. So I think having a stick in the body to make it a little stiffer would be better for your flying potential. Now, pterodactyls, which are not dragons, but they're kind of like dragons, had this big top knot, which they actually said they used those for turning. When it turned one way, it would make the pterodactyl turn. So if this flops to one side or the other, it'll make it turn. So to make it balance at the quarter chord, I took a little bit of this air dry clay, which may be a problem later on when it dries. It's going to be a little lighter. You want to put it as far out as you can, but I didn't want to put it here because it's too wobbly. So I put it on its chin, making its chin a little more robust. Now, when I did that, I squished it and made it stick on there. And now if I balance my dragon, it's balancing right about a quarter of the way back. And that's where airplanes will fly. There are exceptions. There's a airplane called the Canard, which looks like the very Vigan one that John Denver was flying. And it had the wing, kind of the elevator in the front rather than in the back. And those balance a little different. But most airplanes, you want to balance them about a quarter of the way back. And so this is about right. I could add just a little more clay and probably be okay. Now, with the tail, when I bent it down, you'll notice that it's pointing way down. So the wind hits it and forces it down. So that's called down elevator. And down elevator is not good because you want just a slightly little up on the elevator. Now you can bend these up just a little, but what I did is I took the middle of the dragon and bent it and squished it. Now you could staple that. I'm going to actually. Here's a stapler, red stapler. And I'll go right there and just staple it. Now, if you look at the tail plane here where I bent them down, it's now about the same. They call it incidence as the wing, just a little up, which is what we want. Now, when I made model airplanes, we always gave it a little bit of bend up on the outer wing, which is called wash out. That keeps the airplane from tip stalling because it alleviates some of the lift at the end of the wing. When an airplane tip stalls, the tip will stall and then it'll flip like that and go down. or the other tip will stall and it loses lift and it goes down like that. So they'll spin in. So a little bit of wash out, which is bending the tips up, just the tips, helps. So I'll try flying this one, and you're not going to be able to see it, unfortunately, but it flies pretty good now, or pretty well now, if I want to speak English correctly. And so one thing you could also do if you wanted to, especially if you strengthen the fuselage, is you could cut a little notch right here behind the head like that. Let me show you once I get it torn off. And you can use a big rubber band. And if this had the wooden reinforcement, it'd be good, or even some glue or some more paper reinforcement, which you could staple on. You could put the rubber band in that hook, and then you could pull it out and let it go, and the rubber band would launch it like a catapult. So to make an airplane fly, or in this case, a dragon or a pterodactyl, if you wanted one, you need a little bit of weight at the front. I use this air dry clay, which when it dries, it's going to be less weight. So you might have to wet it or add a little more clay. Balance it at the quarter cord. The cord is this way on the wing. So a quarter of the way back. It was balancing back here before, which will make it stall. Poor dragon. And then I bent the tail down. Now this has enough flat side for a rudder. Some airplanes have a V tail, which you could push this up and make a V, and that sometimes gives it a little more stability. Pushing them down. And I put a toothpick to stiffen the wings, but I also bent the tips of the wings up, kind of like an F4U Corsair, though it went down and then up, called the gull wing. This would just be called dihedral. And what the dihedral does is when one wing goes down, since it's bent like that, this wing wants to go level again. And if it goes down, the other wing wants to go level again. So most model airplanes have more dihedral, this bend, than regular airplanes, because regular airplanes, you have a pilot to control this. But with a model airplane, the dihedral helps to control it and keep it upright. So there's making your dragon fly. Add clay so it balances at the quarter cord. Put a stiffener on the wing. I used a toothpick, but you could use a wire or a paper clip unbent. Bring the tips up a little bit, and then the edges of the tip I bent up just slightly to give it washout so it doesn't tip stall. And then on the tail, I put them as flat as possible, but then I bent the fuselage to give it it should be almost the same angle as the wing, but if it's slightly up, that's good. That'll help your airplane fly. If you do too much up, it will go, stall. And if it didn't have the washout, it would stall and one wing would drop and you'd go into a spin and it would be going, help me, help me, help me. I did a 10-turn spin in a Schweitzer 232 once on purpose, and it was 1,000 feet per minute down. Each spin, each turn was 1,000 feet. And so we were at 10,000 feet or about 11,000 feet. We wanted to get down so they didn't charge us extra money. So we did this spin, 10 turns down to 1,000 feet into the pattern. We're supposed to enter the pattern at 1,000 feet and came in and landed. So it was very nice. All right. Thank you very much. That's making your dragon fly. Bye-bye. Let me check out of here and